Alright, let's dive into a story that's equal parts frustrating and eye-opening. Imagine living in a home you love, but being trapped in a never-ending battle with rats. Sounds like a nightmare, right? Well, that's the reality for Kenny Ford, a 32-year-old man from Ayr, Scotland. And what makes this really interesting is how it's not just about the rats, it's about the tangled web of responsibility, bureaucracy, and human indifference that's keeping him stuck in this situation. Here's the deal. Kenny's been dealing with a rat infestation for nearly a decade. Personally, I think this is one of those stories that highlights how small systemic failures can snowball into a full-blown crisis for someone. Kenny's not just any tenant. He's someone with severe health issues who also cares for his mom, who has her own medical needs. So, this isn't just about discomfort. It's a health hazard. What many people don't realize is how quickly a pest problem can become a life-altering issue when you're already vulnerable. Now, let's break down the core issue. Kenny's property is sandwiched between two privately owned homes whose owners refuse to report the rat problem. Why? Because there's a £75 fee for private residents to call pest control. Meanwhile, council tenants like Kenny can report issues for free. This creates a bizarre incentive structure where the burden of reporting falls on people who can't afford to ignore it. From my perspective, this is a classic example of how costs, even small ones, can disproportionately affect certain groups and create systemic inequality. What's even more frustrating is the council's response. They've sent pest control to Kenny's property multiple times, but their hands are tied when it comes to the neighboring homes. The council claims they can't intervene because the properties are privately owned. But here's where it gets messy. The Prevention of Damage by Pests Act 1949 says landowners must take steps to control infestations. So, why isn't anyone enforcing that? One thing that immediately stands out is how laws on paper often fail to translate into action when there's no clear mechanism for accountability. Kenny's tried everything, contacting the landlords, pleading with the council, even trying to move. But he's stuck because he needs a home near the hospital for his mom's appointments. If you take a step back and think about it, this is a perfect storm of circumstances: health vulnerabilities, bureaucratic red tape, and neighbors who won't take responsibility. It's not just a rat problem, it's a human problem. What this really suggests is that we need to rethink how we handle shared responsibilities in communities. Why should the onus be on individuals to report and pay for pest control when it's a collective issue? And why aren't there stronger penalties for property owners who neglect their duties? This raises a deeper question. Are we designing systems that prioritize convenience over human well-being? A detail I find fascinating is how the council spokesperson mentions that overgrown gardens contribute to the problem, but claims they can't act solely because a garden is untidy. Personally, I think that's a cop-out. If a neglected property is creating a health hazard, shouldn't there be some way to intervene? It feels like we're prioritizing property rights over public health, and that's a dangerous trade-off. In my opinion, Kenny's story is a microcosm of larger societal issues. It's about the gaps in our systems, the lack of empathy, and the way we often leave vulnerable people to fend for themselves. It's easy to dismiss this as a local issue, but it's happening everywhere. People trapped in situations they can't control because no one wants to take accountability. What makes this story powerful is how it forces us to ask, what kind of society are we building when someone like Kenny is left to suffer? So, here's my closing thought. Stories like Kenny's aren't just about rats or red tape. They're about the choices we make as a society. Do we prioritize individual convenience over collective well-being? Do we turn a blind eye to suffering because it's easier? Or do we demand better, not just for Kenny, but for everyone stuck in similar situations? Personally, I think it's time we start asking these questions louder. What do you think?